All right, welcome everyone to episode 14 of Portfolio Talks. With me, I have the Hoodie Brothers, Tyson and Mike Lloyd from the Home Happy team. I clearly didn't get the memo that we're wearing hoodies for today, so Mike made a joke before he jumped on. It looks like I'm wearing a long john on the top of my body, but I promise you it's not. So today, episode 14, just as a reminder, the premise of Portfolio Talks is to bring conversation around money to you through your screen at your fingertips so you can no longer be in the background when it comes to how to gain education and knowledge to make your money decisions, but instead you can hear from experts like ourselves and the guests that we bring on. If you missed it, last week on episode 13, we had a special edition of Portfolio Talks where we brought in the graduating class that we spoke to last year from UBC Dentistry, and they shared some insights about their career. What is it like to adult all of a sudden and go from like a student to a full-fledged dentist? So if you haven't seen that, make sure you go back and check out that video, and that's going to be episode 13 of Portfolio Talks. So episode 14, we're going to talk about tax strategies for high income earning professionals. So first off, let's just pass it off around the table. Tyson, Mike, how's your morning? How's your cold morning? Clearly, it's a little bit chilly because you're wearing hoodies.
A little chillier. Yeah. Feeling
Yeah.
uh feeling the knees and the season's changing.
Yeah, well, I'm good. I don't mind it. It's at least it's not raining right now. So yeah, I'll take that. But yeah,
Yeah,
things are busy. How about you guys? So you guys finding it crazy busy right now?
Man, Vishal and I have been running around like chickens with no heads because we've had event after event after event. And then the last, I don't know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks it's been like 12-hour days for me and we've had like an event. So that means I gotta cram all my work either in the morning or at night after we get back. And I've just been exhausted. And so I was saying to Vishal last night, like it was my first day I've actually gone to the gym in almost 2 weeks because I just didn't want to do it. I was so exhausted.
yeah. It's been very, very busy. And to Tyson's point, just had a bunch of different events. We have more upcoming. October, November is usually the busiest time of the year for us,
Yep.
for clients, signing up with us, getting policies, getting investment advice, all this kind of stuff before the year end comes. So it's generally the most, busy time. But on top of that, we're doing a bunch of webinars and workshops and events, attending events, hosting events. So it's just been very, very busy. And I think we have 3 or 4 more events in November as well. So yeah, it's just it's the push before the end of the year, but that's okay because in December no one wants to talk to us, and that's all right. So I'll just watch Hallmark movies and hang out. Can't
Yeah, well,
complain.
when we
And
had
there's
Prime drop like it did, we've had a lot more people wanting to look at potentially refinancing, paying out debt, moving from a fixed maybe to a variable, that kind of situation. So we're very busy right now too.
Love it. Actually, I want to talk about that point at the end of the call. So, one of the things that we do at Portfolio Talks is we teach you one tangible thing that you can actually action in your financial life, and it's usually at the end of the call. So, one thing I do want to talk about, Mike, with your permission, because you're the expert on this, is we're talking about tax strategies. But one of the best tax strategies you can do is get tax-free money, which is actually from your property. When rates drop, you're gonna have more equity. You'll have a lift in equity most likely because more buying power, your price and value goes up. How do you pull that money out and what could you possibly do with it? And then we can take back in after that. But let's start off with some key strategies for doctors, lawyers, business owners. They're probably out there watching this video and they're coming to the year end, mostly November, sometimes December, and they're just wondering like, I've had a great year. It's been a busy year. Because of that, I have a large tax bill coming up. What are some tax strategies that are available to these people? Tyson, if you want to kind of spearhead this first.
Yeah. Okay. So, one of the things that's changed this year that's really interesting is we had a change in the capital gains inclusion rate. And so, in previous years at this time, we would have conversations with clients and their accountants about tax loss harvesting. So, if you have a portfolio and you have gains in one area that maybe you want to take, and you have losses in another area, you can sell the losses if you owned Enron or Bre-X or something like that, and you had massive losses that you just can't get out of. Man, when I started at the bank, people were mortgaging their house to buy Nortel stock, and that went away really quick. That's a scary thing.
Yeah.
But this year, because we've had change in capital gains inclusion rate, is maybe we want to talk about taking gains but at the lower capital gains inclusion rate. So if you're below $250,000 of capital gains, you get the old rate on the personal side. And then if you're above $250,000, you're at the new rate, which is 2/3. So it's 66.6 inclusion rate, which is a lot more tax. So because we're coming up to year end, if you're going to have a capital event or you need to liquidate part of a portfolio or maybe you're selling part of your real estate portfolio, if you're able to straddle the year end with it, and maybe you're going to cash in part of it now or in December and then another part in January, then what we can do is straddle the profit harvesting over year end. So you're in two separate tax years and you get to keep a little bit more of your money. Whereas usually at this time we're talking about lost harvesting so that instead of a write-off or something, you can sell the losing piece of your portfolio, get out of the investment that you didn't want to be in anyway, and keep those losses so you can put it towards future gains. So
Love that.
it's an interesting
That's
place to
cool.
be. We haven't had that
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people sometimes get confused with when is the right time to sell a stock. And what I would say is when you're buying stock, you should almost always buy something that you're okay holding for a significantly long period of time because that means it's valuable. Things like altcoins on crypto aren't really like that. When it comes to the Shopify's, it wasn't really like that. A lot of people, GameStop, people were just, I want to get in and get a lift. But if you're doing that, you don't really understand the business for the most part. But if you're buying good companies that have long track records and upward lift potential, you're okay holding for the long term. So then the question comes like, does it make sense to sell? I don't really know. Like maybe you could lift even more in the future. Yes, I have a capital gain now, but what if it continues to go up in the future? And what we tell people like that is the best time to sell is when you have something else to do with that money. So if you're selling it just to hold on cash and try and time the market, that's probably not the right strategy. However, if you have something else you're looking to do with that money, so if it's something like you're going to start a business and you need the liquidity or the cash to put into that business, if you're looking to move away from stocks and buy another real estate property or pay off some consumer debt or something like that. If you have something else to do with the money, then it could make a lot more sense to look at your portfolio and see where some significant gains were and where you can sell that in a strategic way so that you're ending, you're on both sides of your year end or straddling your year end, and that way you can sell it, get a more tax advantage capital gains treatment, and then you can do something else with your money later on down the road. So that's just a word of advice. I know a lot of people come into that point and they're like, well, yeah, theoretically I could sell it, but why would I sell it? I don't know what to sell, when to sell, or any of that kind of stuff. A lot of people know when to buy a stock. It's a down market. COVID was a great example. When COVID happened, everything plummeted. People like it's a good time to buy. But a lot of people struggle with understanding when it's the right time to sell.
Yeah. I think to add on to that is people approach this as a game when they're investing and like it's a video game because you can just do it on your phone now and it's very intuitive and it is fun. But I think that the ones who are the most successful in the DIY investor space is they approach it as a business. So they're looking to get something out of it and they have an idea of like the map that they want. And having a plan to take profits off the table at certain increments makes a lot of sense because I have watched people have a large portfolio. There was just one that was in the news and the guy's suing his bank. So he bought a stock, it went up to like 20 million or something like that, and they didn't advise him to sell, and he lost a bunch of it, and then now he's suing the bank because they didn't give him the advice to cash in, even though you know it's when it's good, it's hard to tell people to get out and like lock in the goodness, and then when you lose, then they want to come for your head and say like, how
Yeah.
come you didn't tell me to take profits off the table? So I think people have to have a plan, and it's okay if your plan sucks because you can make it better, but most people just have no plan, and so they're just kind of like riding it out, and you have no idea where they're going, what they're doing, and what the next steps are.
I think to your point, I think really what you're trying to do is say, try and take some of the emotion out of it and
Yeah.
make it more black and white, right? Like
Yeah,
when I achieve this, I do this. When I do, and instead of going, oh, that's feeling good, let's keep going, and
that's
just like
right.
hoping and hoping, and like nothing goes up forever. So,
That's right.
um, the other point I think is interesting is, and I'm sure you guys run into this a lot, I would think, depending on your age, if you're 30, it's a different scenario with your portfolio and what you're trying to do as opposed to when you're 50. And maybe when you're 50, it's time to rebalance it more and sell things that are just bought because they're going to go up, and as opposed to stuff that's going to pay out better dividends or those kind of things, right? And I'm sure you guys run into that a lot.
Yeah, yeah, it's very true. Because it's worked in the past, then those 55 to 65-year-olds, a lot of times they say, well, it's already worked. Look at what it's done for us. And we say, hey, but now we're in the phase where we're trying to keep money.
Yeah.
And, we're not just trying to grow it, we're trying to keep it. And so a lot of like what Vishal and I do is not necessarily get you the best rate of return, but it's protect you and hedge all of your risk so that you stay rich and not just get rich and
Yeah.
potentially lose it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Mike, you hit a good point. I think in almost all aspects of life, if you can not act emotionally and act logically instead, you're always going to come out ahead. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a situation where acting emotionally benefits you in any way. It always hurts you. And that can be easy to understand when it comes to money. We call it heuristics in our line of work for those of you watching, but there's a lot of heuristics out there, which just essentially is a psychology term to mean that you have your own bias in a decision-making process. So to Tyson's point, sorry, is looking at your stock where it's always done so well for me. It's like a recency bias. Oh, it's done well, it's going to continue to do well. That's not necessarily the case. And we actually just had this twice in the last year with two different clients who had a lot of stock options given to them from their employer, but now they're approaching that age where they're in their 40s and 50s, and they're starting to look at it where it's like yeah, I got a multi-million-dollar portfolio, but 90% of it is in one company, which holds a ton of risk. So at that point, Mike, you're right. We're trying to re-diversify or rebalance their portfolio. Where Tyson's strategy he alluded to earlier is strategic selling off of certain equities, where you can start to sell some of your stocks in the better capital gains rates, and then start to buy different types of stocks where it's just rebalancing. So now instead of in 2024, you're 90% of your portfolios is one company, but in 2025, maybe it's 82% or 80. That was such a weird number. I don't know why I said 82, but 80%, and it starts to go down from there. So
that was your heuristics. You just chose 82.
As I said, I was like, why? Like, why would I do 82? Clearly, I've been watching football a lot. That's a good football number, but yeah, it's just one of those things. So when it comes to another strategy for those professionals out there, I think that's a huge one that we just talked about, and just making sure you talk to your advisors about this. So, obviously you can't watch this and be like, oh, I know exactly what to do. But the point of it is to trigger a thought in your mind to be like, I should talk to my advisors, my financial planners, my accountants, and see if this fits my strategy. Another thing is just good bookkeeping. Like, there's a lot of deductions that are out there for you, and a lot of people miss out on a ton of these deductions. So if you're watching this and you are a self-employed high income earner, just know that there's a lot of deductions. If you don't know what's available to you, again, talk to your advisors, talk to your accountants, your financial planners, and they can provide a checklist of types for you. But generally speaking, if it takes money to make money, that's probably a deduction. So things like marketing, things like meals and entertainment, that's a lesser so, but software, equipment, staff, if it takes
Training.
money to make money, yeah, exactly. If it takes money to make money, then it's most likely a deduction. And the funny thing about that is oftentimes when we have students that graduate and start working, they're like, what's something to expect that, for being a business owner, how, balancing with my significant other. I'm like, there's two main things that I noticed is number one, work-life balance is very easy to overwork. So just be cautious of that. But number two, you're going to have receipts freaking everywhere. And I feel bad for my wife because there's receipts in the car, there's receipts like at home, there's receipts everywhere. And I just take photos of them and put it in my OneDrive. But I don't tend to throw out the receipts. So it's one of those things that I always laugh, because good bookkeeping will save you money on taxes, because you need all that stuff to be organized. And if you're organized, you can get deductions that reduce your taxable bill. But those are some examples of deductions. I don't know if you guys have anything else.
Just tracking, I think. I mean, when you start your business, it's like, yay, all this cool stuff to think about, but you don't think about the boring stuff. And the boring stuff is get receipt bank, or not what you do. Receipt Bank's better. You scan your bill and it tracks everything.
Yep.
But yeah, like there's the little boring things that like the $2 parking uh, thing. I mean, it sounds stupid, but if you do that every 5 days, and it adds up. Like, don't take that stuff and like 20-year-old you might have thought, oh, who cares? It's just a toonie, whatever. And now, like over a year, if you did that 50 times, I know it doesn't sound like much, but over 20 years, it turns into something. And
Yeah.
it's just it's the mindset and the habit of making it a habit to keep track. And
Yeah.
the more you do that, the more your advice givers can help you and continue your plan and move you forward.
Yeah. I just want to know, where are you parking for $2? Because when I go downtown, it's like
In
20 bucks.
1982, I parked in 1982.
But I agree, Mike, is that I do use technology, and so like with our parking app that we have for Vancouver, is sometimes I'll even look for places that have the same parking app, whereas
Right.
some parkades are different ones, and then you have like 5 apps, and that's stupid. But at the
Yeah.
end of the year, you can log in, and I can print all my receipts, and now I've captured just about all my parking. And so little things like that, it makes your life very easy to organize, because there have been years where, like I forget to claim a course that I took or something, and it's 2,500 bucks, and now it's like, where do I go and find my receipt? I gotta email the school, or I gotta do this or whatever. And so for somebody who's in a profession, like you might be at conferences, you might be at different things, and yeah, keeping track of your expenses and having a folder, or even, one of my accountants, he just has like a banker's box, and he just chucks all his stuff in there. And at the end of the year, at the last hour, because they do their stuff last,
Of
then they
course.
go through the box and like add it all up.
I think the
Yes,
other
that's
thing
one of the
is
strategies.
work on whatever your stuff is inside your company. Maximize that. I think a lot of people forget about, they've got 100 grand sitting in their checking account for the business. Like that's silly. Use it. Like don't um, maximize all those little things that can help later on. And hopefully, I mean, when you first start, yeah, you don't have much in there because you're just getting going. But as you move along, that can become something where you buy your building with it or use it for the down payment at least. And there's so many other advantages that you want to take advantage of because you set that company up. And um, I think ask a lot of questions for your accountant and or all your experts that uh, where are ways that I can where what help me plan this out, because a lot of people I find they don't ask the questions, so then the person helping them doesn't really offer them anything, and that's not good. You want to have both. You want to be asking questions, but you also want the person to look at your business and show you ways that you can save money or save taxes. Or I mean, I remember I had one accountant who talked me out of writing off car stuff because, I mean, we just use regular CRA mileage now, but I used to put my website on the car and things like that and say it's marketing. And this guy was great because he said, listen, you are going to get audited, period. Like everybody will. Our job is to protect you as much as we can, and one of the ways we can protect you is not having stupid write-offs. Like don't attract them. Just and it's true, because I mean when you're 25, you're like, hey, let's like my accountant does this. Oh, that's awesome. How do you do that? And you're more focused on trying to get away with it as opposed to just be real and build around the rules and not try
Yep.
to. I mean, you always want to pay as little tax as possible, don't get me wrong, but use the rules the right way. Don't try and circumvent them.
Yeah, and I think those like that happens a lot with like the TikTok accountants that people see that, oh, I can write this off,
Exactly.
and even especially for someone like yourself that's a car enthusiast, you're probably gonna not keep that car forever. You're gonna sell it eventually. So, even it's a good thing your accountant told you not to do that, because there's something called the recapture that happens when you sell something. So even if you did write it off, when you sell it, you have to recapture that write off that you did anyway. So it's gonna be added to your taxes later on. So you don't really actually
Yeah.
write it off. It's just you got to recapture it when you sell it anyway. So a lot of times it doesn't make sense to aggressively write things off for a number of different reasons. Like that actually kind of leads to another conversation that we can talk about now. Is sometimes there's things that you want to buy inside your corporation. So writing off everything isn't always the best idea, because you need to show a certain level of income. For example, let's say myself, portfolio planning, I want to buy a commercial property. So me and Tyson are going to buy a commercial property, but we don't do it strategically. So we don't talk to our mortgage broker, we don't talk to our accountant, we don't talk to our financial planner. It's like, yeah, I'm just gonna, I'm talking to my realtor, my commercial realtor, I'm gonna buy this later on. So tax season comes, which is right now. We write off as many things as possible. All Tyson's beauty courses that he's been taking to look as good as he does, all that stuff, write that off, write that off, car, write that off. Every bill, every parking. So we bring our income significantly down, which is a win in a lot of people's eyes. Like, I'm paying less tax. That's fantastic. Let's say property is supposed to be closing, subjects removed at the end of December. Mike, what happens at that point if I've written off all my income?
Yeah, it gets ugly really fast. I mean, it's what I tell my clients is this. If you want to buy or you do something, excuse me, if you're self-employed and you're going to buy real estate, lenders are going to look at your taxes and they're going to say, "Oh, you write everything off. You don't show anything." And not to say that every lender's like that. Obviously, we have extreme circumstances, but different. But in general, think of it like a calculation. How much do you save in tax, and are you okay with paying slightly higher rates? That's kind of the combination. So if you pay 2% more and on a mortgage that's say 10 grand a year, but you save 50 grand in taxes, that's a pretty easy calculation. But if you're only saving 7,000 in taxes and then still paying 10,000 more because you don't show enough, that's a dumb calculation. So, and you need to know your numbers. I think that's a big part of being self-employed. Know your numbers, right? Know what you're doing with, like so many accountants, I think are pre-programmed just to try and write everything off as much as possible because that's what most Canadians want is I don't want to pay any tax. Well, to your point, sometimes paying some tax would make sense, especially if you have a plan to buy your first home or buy your property or whatever it is that you're going to need to show somebody how much income you make. So yeah.
Totally. I have a client who's like a big time developer. They develop commercial real estate here, but he always says, he's like, taxes is like a membership club. He's like, it's like the country club membership club. You got to pay in your taxes, which is your club fees, in order to get the benefits of it, which is lending power. So he's like, that's kind of how I always thought about it. Is you can pay it to get more and then do more with it. So a lot of people are so gung ho. You're to your point. You're exactly right. Is about write offs, and that's kind of why accountants I think are pre-programmed for the most part to have that language, because truthfully that's kind of what earns them business. Like, that's the talking points that earns them business, even if they don't fully follow that philosophy, where it's like, I'm like, they know that they should be writing stuff off, and a lot of them don't aggressively write things off, but they just say it in order to get business. So people
Yeah.
hear it, they're like, all right, cool, I'm writing off everything. But yeah, you definitely don't want to be in a situation. And I think what Mike said is so important is know your numbers, but you don't necessarily need to know your numbers. You just need to know enough to hire professionals around you
Sure.
that can do these calculations for you, because there's a lot of people out there who are really good in their craft. They could be a fantastic hematologist, but they're just not good in the finances. If you were to take me and pop me into the hospital, I would be a train wreck. Like, you don't want me anywhere in there. So it's okay for you not to be good at a certain aspect of it, but just hire the people and bring the people around you that can think in this thought process. They dot all the I's, check all the T's, all these things like that. But that's a great example of why you don't want to write everything off. And the last thing I would say when we're talking about tax year end is how you pay yourself. So we talked about a little bit two episodes ago, I believe, about the difference of salary versus dividends. But Tyson, do you want to just talk briefly about, like, if you're a business owner, my corporate year end is coming up. I've been pulling money out of my operating company account into my personal account and spending it. So now I got to decide how I'm paying myself. What makes the most sense of salary versus dividends? What should be my thought process to choose between the two?
Yeah, I think some of the determination is what's going to be happening in the next couple of years and like how do you need to show income? And so much to like what you were just saying about approaching year end and pulling money out and applying qualifying for a mortgage. This is not tax advice. Do we have to have like a disclaimer? This is not tax advice. Consult
Not tax
your
advice.
professionals. Um, but I have seen before where we are preparing a professional to purchase a new home or purchase an office or something, and we'll do a year-end straddle. And so if they've been showing dividend-only income for the last few years, they qualify differently for their mortgage. And so this year, it's November, we're going to pull a little extra and count it as salary. And then in January, we're going to pull a little extra and count it as salary. So they have 2 years worth of income that they can show now. You will pay tax on it, but You'll get to work with Mike or your mortgage broker, and he'll be able to help you, and it'll be a little bit smoother, right? Consulting and working with your professionals is a lot like working with a personal trainer. You can't show up to your personal trainer once every 2 years and say, make me look sick. And
Yeah.
you gotta talk to them regularly, and you gotta have them involved in your program. And so the difference between dividends and salary, there's pros and cons to each. It's very normal for your accountant to say you should do dividends because you're going to pay less tax. If you're dividend only and you're paying yourself that way, you can not contribute to CPP as a business owner because you would pay as the employee and the employer, so you're going to save yourself about $8,000 a year. If you're doing that, you have to find a program that you're investing at least $8,000 a year into because you're going to want to pay yourself something later. If you're taking salary from your corporation, some of the benefits of that is you're going to generate RRSP room. So you can contribute to your RRSPs, which is your retirement. If you're over 45 and you're earning over a certain amount of money, you can take salary out of your corporation and we can actually qualify you for an IPP, an individual pension plan. So we can build you a defined benefit pension plan as a professional, and you don't have to belong to any group or association in order to have access to that. That's for you and your family. Um, and really, it's about understanding how you want to show income, how much tax you want to pay, and then what else you're doing in your financial picture in the recent years. And that's financial planning, that's tax planning, and it's mortgage planning, right? And they all tie together.
The one really thing you just said, which I think is notable, is that person that's been doing 30 years of pulling dividends and not showing any salary. They literally have like no RSP room from that 30 years.
That's right.
And I think people don't get that. That's RSPs are gained off of the percentage is allowed because of your salary, not because of any pen or dividends. So
Yep.
it's a really good point for people to understand because early on you don't think about it. But 30 years later you might say, oh, I don't have any RSPs. Well, yeah, because
Yeah.
Well,
It's a
it
very,
goes further than that. Sometimes it goes further than that. Again, it goes down to not having advice. It's just people hear one thing and just make a decision based off that. But we've seen people that have done exactly what Mike said. They've gone like 30 years without doing anything else besides dividends. They weren't investing that money instead into any type of investment. So they're like, oh, it's fine. I'm just going to save the money on the taxes. But now you don't have a retirement income stream besides your old age security. So they don't have CPP payments coming in retirement. They also don't have the RSP room because they were just paying themselves dividends, and they also don't have another disability source because CPP also provides you some disability income as well, but you have to opt into it. So they opt out of all that stuff in order to save money on taxes, but don't have any strategy besides that. So they end up spending their money probably on stuff to get write-offs to reduce their tax further, and it's just a vicious cycle. And then by the time you come to your retirement, someone tells you like, hey, it's not much you can do besides just throwing a ton of money into the strategy and just being ultra aggressive and hoping for the best. And it's not a situation you want to find yourself in. So just make sure that the decisions that you're making around tax time are well informed decisions that make sense for you in the next couple of years and then further beyond that, because CPP sometimes get a bad rep, but there's a lot of benefits of it. And if you don't have disability insurance individually on yourself, it might be a good idea to opt into CPP because you get CPP disability. If you're not investing in your own retirement, it might be a good decision to opt into CPP because it's another retirement source. So you just need to make decisions based on what makes sense now in the next couple of years and then in the future. And again, like I said, you always don't have to make those decisions for yourself, but know enough to ask questions to your advisors to see, what the thought process is and where they're guiding you.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is people don't they don't verbalize what their plan is. So in their head, it sounds really good, like my business is my retirement plan. And then, the natural question that any of us would ask is, what does that mean? Um, some people think they're going to sell their business and make millions of dollars. Some people think that I have millions of dollars of retained earnings. I'll just siphon that off. But again, like you said, Vishal, sometimes they don't invest it. You can invest inside your corporation. You can hold investments. Um, If you're going to do that, it may be advisable from your tax professional to have a holdco and separate that from your operating company. But you can do that. We've also seen people do like a corporate insured retirement plan where, they build a product shelf into their holding company and they invest a certain way so that you get a tax arbitrage on your retirement income. So there's a bunch of things that you can do, but this is why we ask lots of questions, is because we want you to verbalize what your plan is. Because sometimes once it comes out of your mouth, it's like, wait a minute, that didn't sound as good as I thought it would. And now we have an opportunity to make improvements.
And I think when you're young, you're building your company, great. You don't want to pay taxes. I get it. But is that company realistically going to be able to be sold? Like somebody who's a single professional, the business is really you. And if you're
Yep.
not part of it, what value does it have for somebody else to buy from you?
Yep.
And I think you have to have some hard thinking about that because yeah, just going all out to build this company that you can't ever sell isn't the greatest idea. I mean, you can use it like you were just talking about, use it to generate other things, but just to hope that you're going to have somebody write you a $10 million check or something at the end of the day is not necessarily a plan. It's just sort of a hope.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. We have that in our industry where we have a bunch of gray-haired advisors that have been 30 and 40 years in the business and they think they're going to get 3 to 6x income and nobody's going to pay that.
Yeah.
I think the trend is 2x, 2.5x on a book of business now, and it might be declining. Um, I don't know what it's like on the mortgage side, but I'm sure that people build a practice and then sell the practice. But is it selling for what it used to? And have you revisited your plan about like what your exit is? And that's probably a whole nother topic of succession planning. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
man, nobody does that.
No. And I mean, like, imagine a dentist that's just a single dentist, or, and people came because of that person being part of it. What are you buying at that point? Like, it's hard to, I think
There's
it's
so much
something that doesn't
goodwill.
get talked about a lot, right? It just sort
That's
of,
right.
Yeah.
you just hope it works out. And if you're
Yeah.
hoping, it's not a plan.
Yeah, I don't want to
Yeah.
spin too much off into that topic. I think that's a whole other episode that
Yep.
we can do. But even it happens sometimes where someone gets, their business is sellable, but there's never a good time to get seriously ill. But there is a horrible time, and that's right before retirement age. And that's happened sometimes where people get ill. Also, their valuation drops significantly, and then trying to sell a distressed business, which is never a good idea, anyways. But we'll talk about that more in a different episode.
Yeah.
Um, what I'd love to finish off talking about is we talked about tax strategies, but there's one tax strategy we didn't really talk about, which is specific to real estate. So let's say, for example, the first thing that we talked about was someone that has a lot of money into the stocks and they're rebalancing their portfolio. They start to sell some stocks, get that money to be more liquid, like cash, and they're going to take that and buy real estate. So now instead of having all their money in stocks, they're going to break it, have stocks and real estate. And let's say they did that 2 years ago and now the interest rates are dropping, so presumably the value of their property is increasing. Debt is one of those things in Canada that is tax free, which is very rare that you can avoid tax in Canada. So the fact that you can via debt is cool, but I think it's a very confusing topic to those people that have that opportunity. So the thing I want to teach people about today, and by me I mean Mike, is how can you take advantage of debt in a rental property or your primary residence or whatever.
Yeah. Just like we've heard, I mean, there's good debt and bad debt. And, um, just spending money for the sake of spending money doesn't make sense. But if you've built up this equity in your property and you have, um, room to take it out, say up to 80% of the value, that's usually what we can go to. And that money can be pulled out and used for business. So it could be investment in your business, or it could be investing in a rental property, or as long as there's a trail that shows you took the money out to invest in some kind of a business, CRA is okay. And it's amazing that a lot of people will sit on a multi-million dollar property with virtually nothing owing on it and don't realize that they could use this for good debt. And so that allows you, let's say you're buying a rental property, you can finance 100% of that rental property and write off all the interest on 100% of it. That's like, what other business can you do that in? And it's incredibly, it just is one of those things people don't really get. And it's not hard. It's easy relatively, and yeah, you keep track of it all. Your accountant keeps track of it all, and it's very easy to write off. So, um, yeah, I'm a big believer in maximizing your equity, using it for the right things. If you're a dentist and you have an office and you want to buy a second office, and let's use some of the equity out of your home, lend it to your company. Your company now can go do that, and the company now owes you, and there's tax benefits there too. So, it can get complex. It's not that complex most of the time, but it can get complex. But it's definitely a tax-free scenario that makes a ton of sense, and it's we need to educate people better on that.
Yeah. Now, on the investment side, we call something like that there once upon a time. It was called the Smith maneuver,
Yeah.
right? Or a debt swap. Now, if you're doing it to buy a business or buy another piece of property, do you call it the same thing or no?
No, I mean
Right.
the Smith maneuver is about moving your the money you owe personally that you can't write off into something you can write off. So in this scenario, we're talking about it's borrowing money for a specific investment that you're allowed to do. So it's not quite Smith maneuver is interesting and it's good. I think the problem I had with the Smith maneuver was it was sort of sold to 90% of Canadians, and it's not good for 90% of Canadians. It's good for a small percentage, and in those situations, it makes a lot of sense. But you have to have the money, and there's a lot of other stuff that goes with it. We won't talk about it here, but yeah, in
Yeah.
general, we can refinance. You can take it out. Let's say you owed 100,000, and we took out another 500,000 for an investment in whatever you choose. But you now have a $600,000 mortgage. The 100,000 is not. I'm not an accountant, so get your professional advice. But the 100,000 would be considered your personal mortgage, and the 500,000 is for the investment. You can keep track of that. You can actually show the principal paying down on your 100,000 and not on the 500,000 until the 100,000 is gone. So then you're strictly just a write off on the whole thing. So yeah, there's lots to it, but it's definitely something more and more people should think about, and allows us to do more than just pay off your mortgage and sit on a house with no money owing on.
Yeah. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
W- We used to have the conversations with retirees that had all their money only in their home and they had no savings, they had no investments. And it's like, okay, so now what are we gonna do? Are we gonna take the cupboards off the kitchen cabinets and sell them to buy groceries? Like, what's the plan?
Yeah.
And we have a lot of baby boomers that have a multi-million dollar home and really don't have a lot of savings. And so I think, talking to a professional like you is can open some doors because a lot of people don't want to be, unhoused, but they don't have a plan for supporting themselves either.
Yeah, I mean, if you're say in your 30s or 40s, you could take out money even just to top up your RSPs. I mean, that might make a lot of sense to get your money in so it's got 20 or 30 years to grow. For people who are getting older, I mean, we have some line of credit solutions and we have some reverse mortgage solutions that um, are growing like crazy right now because there are so many of those people that sit on a ton of equity and they're not either they don't have enough income because they didn't have a plan for that stuff, or they want to do more with it and either invest in more money making sort of situations or help their kids. I mean, there's a lot of different scenarios that falls under those. We're doing more and more of them, and it also the rule changes in mortgages about in 2016 caused a lot of where people used to walk in their branch and still get approved even when they're not really showing much income. Those rules changed the game for those people. They can't just walk into their branch and get the money they used to get. So there are solutions, but we have to educate people better on those and let them know.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's a lot of strategies that we covered today for those of you who are high income earning professionals. So the doctors, the lawyers, the dentists, and just incorporated business owners. There's a lot of things you can do to be tax savvy. And it doesn't mean just reducing your tax. It's not one of those things that, you will write off as much as possible because that may hurt you instead of helping you. So it's one of those things that you need to have a thought, have a discussion, verbalize it, and then talk to your advisors about it as well. And you can formulate a great plan to make sure that you achieve the goals that you had for yourself in the most tax efficient way possible. But do it sooner rather than later because tax year end is coming. So it's very rare that you can go back in time and change things. You need to be proactive about these types of stuff. So if you're watching this and anything that we talked about give you an idea, make sure that you take the next step automatically and book a meeting with your advisors, your accountants, your financial planners, your mortgage brokers, and have a discussion of, hey, what makes the most sense for me, and of course, if you're not happy, then look for other options because you pay these people. So it's not that they're doing it out of the kindness out of their heart. They're being paid to do a job. So if they don't know it, that's okay. Because the last thing I would finish off with is it's common sometimes that people outgrow their advisors. Sometimes you inherit a family accountant or a family financial planner, whatever it may be, but your life and your specific finances are very different than your parents. It's okay for you to outgrow the advisors that you have, but you need to make sure that you're aware of it. And the only way you're going to be aware of it is by having these questions of, hey, what's your idea on this? What's your idea on this? And if you're not happy with the answer, maybe get a second opinion and then you can make a decision based off that. So, there's a lot of time that we have, and I'm guilty of this too. I spend it doing, not that the most efficient things possible, but things like having discussions about your tax situation, it comes around a couple times a year, so it's very important that you take the time to do it. So just want to thank you all. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Tyson. And of course, if you aren't already following Portfolio Planning and on the YouTube channel, make sure you follow us. Turn on the notifications, get the Portfolio Talks, and you see Mike's beautiful face. And, you've seen him wear polos and you've seen him wear sweaters. So I'm excited to see what he wears next week. And there's only one way to find out is by tuning in next week to see as well. So hope you guys all have a great day and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.